Il y a une vingtaine d'années, l'aube d'une quatrième révolution industrielle est apparue, timidement, avec ses rêves et ses promesses. Nous avons appris avec les années à mieux coopérer grâce à tous ces nouveaux outils que nous offre la science du numérique. Mais comme toute société, l'humanité se doit de contrôler parfaitement et sous tous ses aspects l'environnement dans lequel elle vit. L'hyperconnexion reconfigure les relations entre groupes sociaux. Tels des électrons gravitant autour d'un noyau, nous tissons des liens grâce à de petits objets qui font aujourd'hui partie de notre quotidien. Ces objets connectés seront 3 fois plus nombreux que la population humaine d'ici 2020. Associés à leur relative autonomie, cela crée une sorte de cyberorganisme. Et comme tout organisme, il peut être attaqué. Il y a un peu plus d'1 an, un botnet d'objets connectés provoqua en quelques mois l'infection puis le contrôle de plus de 600 000 machines. Il aura suffi d'une touche et d'un maillon faible pour contaminer la planète entière. Le champ d'action des pirates est vaste, car les objets connectés sont de plus en plus variés et de plus en plus nombreux. La naissance d'une industrie 4.0 nous ouvre de nouvelles possibilités de production en ajustant notre rythme et nos méthodes de travail. La domotique nous assiste dans notre quotidien et nous permet de profiter au mieux de notre foyer. Les villes intelligentes reconfigurent les territoires urbains en y apportant de nouveaux outils au service des citoyens et de l'environnement. Tous ces éléments connectés circulant dans des réseaux complexes posent la question de leur résilience, c'est-à-dire leur capacité à faire face aux conséquences d'une attaque sur l'un de leurs maillons et à récupérer leurs aptitudes à opérer normalement. Le nombre d'objets connectés étant en pleine croissance, les risques grandissent aussi, et avec eux, leur lot de questions éthiques. Quelle sera par exemple la responsabilité des objets connectés en cas d'incident, voire d'accident? Comment garder notre vie privée tout en restant connecté à ce nouveau monde et à ces nouvelles possibilités? C'est à nous qu'il appartient aujourd'hui de construire l'avenir, de regarder ensemble dans la même direction, afin de garder ce qu'il y avait de meilleur hier dans le monde de demain.
Mesdames et messieurs, merci de votre présence pour cette dernière table ronde aujourd'hui. Nous finissons en beauté car nous allons poser une question combien importante, vous la voyez. What system of collective security worldwide for cyberspace? Quel système de sécurité globale pour le cyberespace? Nous avons un panel tri sur le volet, donc merci d'accueillir tout de suite sur scène, please, if they could come up on the stage. John Frank, James van den Velde, Marina Kaliurant, Florian Escudier, Michael Chertoff et Nicolas Arpagian. Merci de les accueillir. Any seats, it doesn't matter, wherever you wish to. And you have to plug the headphones in for them to work. Donc il faut brancher vos casques pour que cela marche. So, very distinguished panel. I've got a lot of questions to ask you. I'm sure you have tweets. Please don't hesitate to tweet as you've been doing so far. I will take the tweets as you've seen. So a round table which will last about an hour, but I think in order to nourish the debate, as we say in French, John Frank, I think you're going to give us a keynote presentation first of all. The others will be listening, and I'm sure there will be many points that we want to follow up. So thank you.
Good afternoon. Can we bring my deck up?
quelques instants les slides de John Frank. Donc je rappelle le titre, vous êtes Vice President EU Government Affairs, Microsoft. Here we go.
When we look back at 2017 for cybersecurity, I think we'll find it the year of a pivotal change in how we perceive risk. Because I think in 2017, the nation-state risk became perhaps the greatest risk for civilian sector, the private sector of the economy. We have an arms race with invisible weapons, and nation-states are playing games, and we in industry have become the battlefield. I'm just going to start today with a brief overview of telling a couple of vignettes from 2017 that illustrate nation-state engagement in cyber activities where it was civilians that were disrupted the most. And so the story will talk about the United States, Russia, North Korea, and the UK. Beginning with the shadow brokers, a group emerged in 2016 that had acquired the NSA's hacking tools from, not exactly sure when they left the NSA, but this group was offering them online, sometimes posting them, sometimes wanting to auction them. And it caused a stir because the concern was nation-states had developed very extensive capabilities, and to lose track of them, as the United States did, was potentially worrying. Edward Snowden commented that the leak of the NSA hacking tools are Russia's warning to the US government. And so we've got potentially Russia engagement behind the shadow brokers with the release of these tools. On May 12th, the world received a wake-up call. Hackers hit dozens of countries exploiting the NSA tool. And it was a especially virulent tool because it was a combination not just of the exploit to get into systems, employing a 0-day that had not been disclosed, but it was combined with a ransomware that locked the user out of the hard drive and encrypted it so it couldn't be used. The effect was more than 200,000 computers in 150 countries were impacted by this. Now, when we think about, does international law prohibit this? There's no consensus that this would have been a violation of international law today. Certainly, nations who were affected didn't assert that it was. Now, the United States did declare that North Korea was the country behind the attack, combining the NSA's Eternal Blue attack with North Korea's ransomware exploit. Just a few weeks later, we had the NotPetya attack. And it was using similar attack tools, and again, hitting the world in an attack that started on the Ukrainian electrical system, but then spread through the worm configuration to disrupt and disable a large number of companies around the world. Some of the companies impacted, collectively, these companies here reported losses that aggregate over 1.2 billion euros. Now again, under the international laws that exist today, there's not a consensus that this was a violation of international law. The Washington Post reported that the United States government concluded the Russians were behind the second attack. And so we've got the United States, which didn't disclose vulnerabilities that it had learned of. We've got Russia and the United States then losing control of exploits it built using them. You have Russia seeming to be the party that released them through shadow brokers. You've got North Korea weaponizing them. And the UK was the country that was probably the hardest hit, where the National Health Service had over 130,000 appointments disrupted when its systems were greatly compromised. So nation states are playing here, but it is civilians who are most impacted. We've also seen in 2017 the engagement of nation states in other states' elections, and just calling out too, the United States, the Democratic National Committee email was hacked, and wide reports of attempts to hack and in fact disclose the emails just days before the election. I do know that my daughter worked at the Democratic National Committee, and her emails were online. And the impact in the US on the Democratic National Committee was quite significant. A number of people, including the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, resigned just at the critical time when the campaigns were kicking off at the conventions in the summer. So, but again, it's not clear that international law was violated, and none of the countries were asserting it was. So cyberspace has become the battlefield, and we do see civilian impacts. And sometimes people say that borders don't matter in cyberspace, but they do. I want to show you a video of a botnet data stream that we have. We helped take down the Citadel operation botnet, and we found when we diverted all the calls back home into our sinkhole and analyzed the data, we were surprised a little bit by some of the geographic distributions, but they seem to match in the United States, at least, where population centers were. But then in Western Europe, it was, again, fairly similar to population centers. But when we looked further, Cyrillic language countries were exempted from the botnet. And you see a clear border in cyberspace. And so on botnets and other activities, borders do seem to matter. Nation states do seem to be involved. And so what can we do? The first thing is we all know we need to improve our security. At Microsoft, we now invest $1 billion a year in cybersecurity. We have 3,500 cybersecurity professionals, and we are applying as much research into new methods as well as new ways to protect our products and ensure that our customers stay patched and safe. But as the NSA's experience shows, even the NSA couldn't keep track of its hacking tools. And somehow compromise because of human factor is a reality we have to deal with. And so we do want to shift the dynamic by building on existing international law. Just an example of where we believe international law can be improved is what we call the distinction principle, which is nation states are obligated under the rules of war not to target civilians and not to launch attacks that indiscriminately affect civilians, like a worming cyber attack. And yet, the distinction principle only applies in times of war. It was built for armed conflict. It was drafted and agreed for armed conflict. And yet, in today's world, we need that principle even then there's not armed conflict. So we are proposing a set of norms that we'd like to have good discussions about, that governments will change behaviors. And it doesn't have to be a perfect system, but we need to continue the work that's being done today. And so the UN GGE, while it failed to reach conclusion and consensus on all points, it did reach consensus on some points about civilians and not attacking civilian infrastructure. I think earlier today you've heard about the Global Commission on Stability. And I think agreeing norms about protecting the core internet is a very important set of steps. We think there should be more work done around non-interference in elections. We also think there ought to be more work done about standards about below the threshold of armed conflict, establishing norms about nation states not attacking civilians. So we put this forward under the banner of a digital Geneva Convention that we would believe is the aspiration that can be maybe several years down the way, but we need to begin those discussions. And we can begin with small steps. Get agreement among countries that agree. We don't need everybody. Throughout international law's progress, we often make progress when we find some that agree and create a standard, and eventually it becomes more widespread. Let's pick some important issues and not try to attack everything. And we can make incremental progress as we go. But I think the tech sector also has a special responsibility to conduct itself in ways that comport with these principles. And so we're seeking to work with other people in the industry on some principles. We'd like to reach a global tech accord, and we're in early discussions with a number of companies about what this could mean. And this will evolve, and just as the nation-state principles will grow over time, we believe it's important to start with agreements that we can find, and other companies can commit to things they'll do. I know certainly at Microsoft, a basic commitment we make is we are 100% defense and 0% offense. We will not help any government customer, any private sector customer hack into anybody else's system or exploit a vulnerability or do something that will lead to insecurity of our customers. And so with the Global Tech Accord, we want to create a more trustworthy environment. Frankly, it's just as important for us to be trusted by the Chinese government as it is to be trusted by the French government, the United States government, and the Russian government. We need principles to conduct ourselves so that we can be neutral and committed 100% to defense. We also need to increase accountability in the system. At least from our point of view, nation states have too many reasons not to call out bad behavior. Sometimes it's because they don't want to have to deal with the political ramifications of their conclusion. Sometimes it's because they don't want to reveal their sources and methods behind it. And so, realizing that nation states have limitations, we want to encourage more. And so we'd like to propose setting up an NGO that will work on attribution where we can share technical information. Certainly, we acquire a great deal of information, 1 billion data points a year, in our 1 billion data points a day in our telemetry that can be helpful combined with other people's information to help determine sources of these attacks. And so advancing security and learning the lessons from 2017, we believe we need to do much more. We need to recognize that nation states while they can play a positive role, can also play a very negative role in making all of us less secure. We'd like to call more attention to the special problems caused by the rise of nation-state cyber capabilities. And we think it's important as an industry to take steps to advance and to change the paradigm because the digital world that we live in, we're also vulnerable in this new world. And while it has great ways to improve our lives and make us more productive and more connected with our friends, it also has the very great risk that we're all vulnerable to digital interruption. So with that, I look forward to the panel discussion, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much indeed, John, for kicking off the ball. I noticed that you were all listening to that. I'm sure it will give you things to talk about. Just to explain how we're going to do this, just an introductory question to all of you. 4 minutes, if you could, keep it reasonably short, because I would like you to actually start discussing together. Usually the exciting bit of roundtables when you actually start debating with each other. But let's go around, have an introductory round first of all. I'm going to start with Nicolas Arpajon, your Director of Strategy and Public Affairs at Orange Cyberdéfense. Nous allons parler français, je crois. Donc, vous êtes un expert français incontournable, si on peut dire, en cyberguerre et plus largement la cybersécurité. Je crois que c'était en 2009. Votre livre, vous avez déjà déclaré que la guerre numérique a commencé, donc c'était il y a 9 ans. Où est-ce qu'on en est aujourd'hui et est-ce que vous pouvez nous brosser votre vision de l'accélération de la cyberguerre depuis 2009 ?
Merci, alors merci pour cette présentation. Évidemment, la question de la cyberguerre, il s'avère que, effectivement, par rapport au tableau qu'a dessiné John Frank, je permettrai de rajouter une dimension qui est, et elle est déterminante dans notre environnement, le fait que jusqu'à présent la guerre se concevait en opposition à l'état de paix. Il y avait une déclaration de guerre avec une période qui s'ouvrait, ouvrant un régime spécial, ouvrant un contexte spécifique, et on pouvait l'espérer avec un traité, une défaite éventuellement, et pourquoi pas un défilé avec sous un arc de triomphe qui établissait la fin d'un conflit avec un vainqueur, un vaincu. La particularité du numérique tel qu'elle est conçue aujourd'hui, c'est que effectivement l'usage offensif des technologies de l'information va faire qu'en fait, il n'y aura plus cet état de paix, cet état de guerre. Il n'y aura plus cette distinction entre le monde civil et le monde militaire. Vous avez, lorsque l'on a désigné les cibles dans les premières campagnes qui ont atteint des organisations au printemps dernier, début de l'été, des entreprises éminemment civiles par leur activité. Pourquoi ? Parce que soit par perte de production économique, soit par possibilité d'amplifier des situations dans des pays dont des circuits économiques seront mis à mal et donc effectivement créeront un désordre qui viendrait peut-être en complément d'une attaque concernant un État. Et donc on est obligé de changer notre point de vue et de considérer que les États vont devoir déterminer dans quelle mesure on va pouvoir privilégier des acteurs. Alors la réglementation parlait d'opérateurs d'importance vitale, d'opérateurs de services essentiels, mais à un moment, il va falloir se dire quelle est ma dépendance numérique et comment je vais faire dans cet univers où je ne vais pas pouvoir anticiper les cibles, faire en sorte de comprendre le caractère transverse du numérique qui correspond au fait que toutes nos organisations sont irriguées par des systèmes d'information. Alors la notion de guerre, elle va voir qu'elle n'implique pas des militaires uniquement, elle n'implique pas des diplomates, mais des entreprises, des techniciens qui sont civils dans les conceptions des produits, et le fait qu'il va falloir distinguer les utilisateurs des technologies de ceux qui les conçoivent et surtout ceux qui les enrichissent. La communauté des hackers qui sont ces gens qui ont la capacité de personnaliser, d'adapter, d'affiner les outils. Et donc, on voit que la répartition des forces n'est plus la même et qu'il doit bien y avoir un projet de société au sein des États qui n'est plus uniquement l'apanage d'un ministère de la Défense, mais de quelqu'un, de personnel ayant une expertise de ce que la technologie peut faire.
Qu'est-ce que vous appelez un projet de société? C'est quoi?
De société, c'est-à-dire qu'un pays va devoir se poser la question d'avoir des troupes permettant l'engagement de personnel sur les théâtres d'opération, et c'est nécessaire et c'est important, mais d'avoir cette question de où est mon expertise pour assurer sinon mon indépendance, en tout cas mon autonomie numérique. Et ça va être très important, et c'est là où on va s'apercevoir que c'est un projet de société avec un grand S, c'est-à-dire un programme de formation, de réserve tel qu'on peut le concevoir, avec des gens qui mettent à disposition temporairement une partie de leurs compétences et de leur savoir-faire, et le fait qu'en fait, on doit défendre un bien commun qui est la continuité de l'activité de la collectivité nationale. Là, je parle en cas, effectivement, où on considère le pays comme étant la cible des attaques. Et donc, il va falloir répartir différemment l'appréhension de nos forces en impliquant justement ceux qui innovent dans les technologies, ceux qui déploient les technologies et ceux qui peuvent justement anticiper des scénarios de déstabilisation, de mise à mal, de manière, faute d'avoir pu empêcher des attaques, de les identifier le plus vite possible, d'en limiter la circulation et la propagation, et de permettre un retour à la normale dans des circonstances les plus rapides et les plus opérationnelles possibles. Et c'est là où la société doit abattre, ou en tout cas rendre poreuses des séparations qui existaient justement entre la sphère militaire, la sphère strictement privée, voire les particuliers, mais de voir qu'il va falloir reconsidérer le projet collectif avec la formation et la capacité des entreprises à être résilientes. C'est la thématique de cette édition du FIC. C'est une réalité dès lors qu'aujourd'hui les acteurs économiques sont ciblés et que des pays peuvent être déstabilisés, soit par la perte, le vol de renseignements, et c'est là où on voit qu'on n'est pas uniquement dans le conflit armé, mais bien dans une concurrence géopolitique, où même c'est arrivé au sein de la famille européenne, nous sommes en concurrence sur plein de sujets, et donc il va falloir concevoir des alliances d'opportunités qui vont permettre de partager des savoir-faire pour certaines actions, notamment la lutte au nom de la défense militaire au sens de la défense nationale, mais par contre conserver des savoir-faire spécifiques qui permettent que ces acteurs qui sont alliés pour un certain nombre de sujets pourront être compétiteurs dans un environnement, par exemple, économique. Et ça, c'est vraiment une dimension importante. On va avoir une vraie dynamique numérique qui va refaçonner notre manière de concevoir la production de richesses, l'exercice de la souveraineté et justement la capacité d'autonomie des décideurs politiques, économiques, qui auront des informations leur permettant de prendre des décisions les plus éclairées possibles et surtout de conduire des actions avec la certitude que c'est bien les leviers sur lesquels ils appuient vont bien permettre de générer les actions qu'ils ont conçues et anticipées.
Donc ça remet en question toutes nos conceptions de la société, si j'ai bien compris.
Absolument,
en fait,
et de voir qu'effectivement, les plus des jeunes ou des gens avec des esprits peut-être moins académiques pourront apporter leur contribution, des gens ayant une vision stratégique pourront justement et auront besoin d'avoir cette alimentation de ce que la technique rend possible, ne pas s'enfermer dans des modèles où on pourrait se dire non, ce n'est pas physiquement possible. Aujourd'hui, le traitement des données massives, le big data, effectivement, une certaine automatisation, ce qu'on appelle l'intelligence augmentée, c'est-à-dire la capacité de nourrir le raisonnement humain et la prise de décision par des mécanismes d'automatisation, ça modifie les ordres de grandeur de ce qui est envisageable. Il est important de le prendre en compte.
Merci beaucoup. Je signale aussi, on peut l'applaudir, Aster qui est en train, vous aussi, mais Aster qui est en train de dessiner, de saisir au vol nos propos et qui le fait à une vitesse avec un esprit remarquablement rapide. Michael Chertoff, your co-founder and executive chairman of the Chertoff Group, as a former US Secretary of Homeland Security and now a leading US expert on cyber risk with your own consultancy. You're obviously uniquely qualified to bring a US perspective. You were listening very closely to what's been said, so forth. Perhaps it's good if you give us the general geopolitical state of play with various actors, including the states, but also these, what we've been hearing about, obscure criminal groups. Who are they? What are they likely to do? And tell us about this murky environment. What light can you throw on this murky world? And if you could do the whole thing in 4 minutes, that would be fantastic, but I know it's... asking a
Well,
lot.
I'm happy to try. Let me begin by saying I think John made an important point that the distinction between armed conflict and things that don't reach that level really isn't necessarily meaningful in terms of what we deal with in cyberspace for a number of reasons. Ironically, although when we talk about cyberspace, we're talking about a digital world, I would argue geopolitically we're in a quantum world where things can occupy different positions at exactly the same time. We can have things that are both have the quality of war and state action and the quality of being criminal activity at the same time. And certainly we've seen with respect to hybrid warfare, both in the physical world and the cyber world, that it's often impossible to actually draw a distinction between what is being done by criminal groups that are enabled, tolerated, or directed by states and things that would be classic state action. So rather than trying to fit reality into the old categories, I think we do need to revisit what the categories are and have a way of dealing with a world that is not nearly as precise as this. I think a key element of this that we find in the US is the issue of attribution. And again, it's not just a question of can we determine who the perpetrators are, but sometimes the perpetrators may be acting on their own or they may be acting in coordination or in sympathy with somebody else. So attribution, if we're going to have deterrence, if we're going to have response, attribution is not the only answer to the question. A corollary issue is responsibility. If someone is acting on my behalf, and I'm a state actor, and they're operating within my territory using my assets, what is my responsibility to prevent it? And if not, to what extent can I be held accountable? And I think this becomes very important because it gets you out of the box of proving attribution or motive beyond a reasonable doubt, and it assigns responsibility to the nation that is providing the platforms that allow these things to occur. And either the nation takes the necessary steps, or then I would say the norm might be that you can take steps to defend yourself. Another area that it was alluded to briefly, and I think is a hot topic in the US right now, came up in the connection with the vitality of our democratic systems and attacks on the electoral system. But here I think we need to be careful to draw some actual meaningful distinctions. And there are really three types of meddling we have seen discussed both in the US and here in Europe over the last year or two. One would be the direct impact on an electoral or voting or tabulation system. And I think we all agree that's totally off limits. Bringing down a registration system or mechanically changing votes would be something that we would all view very seriously. I have to say I've not seen evidence this has been done in any significant way, but certainly the potentiality is there. A second issue is trolling and the use of false information to generate dissension and disorder and affect the political process that way. There we get into a tricky area because there are some countries that would love to interpret cybersecurity as the ability to control information and ideas that they find unhelpful in their own space. And we tend to call that dictatorship. Iran is a country that might subscribe to that. Others you can think of. So we want to be careful not to cause more damage than what we're actually trying to remedy here. And so I would draw a distinction in this sense. I don't think there is a value of freedom of speech in allowing people to impersonate somebody else's identity or misrepresent who they are or mislead people about where they are coming from. I think calling those things out and enlisting the private sector in revealing the true identity of people or revealing that they're impersonating is a positive step. What I would not do, however, and I know in Europe there are laws now being debated about making fake news illegal, I would not want to have a regime where the government decides what news is fake and not fake and then punishes you. Even in the United States now, we increasingly see politicians enjoy attacking their critics by simply yelling fake news. Now, would we really want to see ourselves move from just a rhetorical use of the term into actual having the legal authority to attack
It's happening
fake news?
in Britain this week. Have you seen there's a department being set up, it was announced yesterday, to combat fake news?
Well, if you want to combat fake news with better, truer news, I think that's fine. It's what we call the marketplace of ideas. But if you want to shut it down, I would be very cautious about where that might lead.
It's true. Actually, I was a bit victim of that because I tweet a lot and I'm very anti-Brexit. And there was a Russian account, which appeared to be a Russian account. It was kind of like proved later because they forgot to put their localization off at one stage, who tried to generate kind of counter discussion on one of my posts. So I was actually very, very much aware of that myself. Thank you. Let's go to James van den Velde from the Adjunct Faculty, Georgetown, and John Hopkins. Now, you're a leading US cyber war strategist and now a lead associate with Booz Allen Hamilton Consulting, often for the intelligence community. And your blog post on cyber war is obviously very influential. Tell us what you think about cyberspace as the fifth domain of warfare. I'm quoting. And cyberware in the larger context of international conflicts. I think we're also going to talk about deterrence, but later in the debate. But give us your take first of all on that.
Well, thank you, Alex, and thank you for having me at this wonderful conference. Let me ask a question. What if warfare, the warfare that the city of Lille saw 100 years ago, never happens again? What if it doesn't happen the way we're used to it happening? What if warfare instead today involves little or no violence whatsoever? States now, malicious cyber states, have figured out ways to maneuver in cyberspace to change sovereignty, to change political realities, and thereby accrue what they want without violence. Is cyberspace the new domain of warfare? Yes, it is, whether we like it or not. And it is because states maneuver in it. In a crude analogy, imagine if the air domain were just invented and malicious states flew over the airspace of France, the United States, and we complained and didn't like it and kept pointing fingers and complaining. Well, the domain is militarized whether we like it or not. It may not be the ideal we want. To complicate this, warfare in the past began with a declaration. There was a prosecution, a clear end, even a signing ceremony, and a recovery period. This type of warfare doesn't really exist today. It does in some cases, but not with the major states, certainly not with the major malicious cyber states. These states purposefully maneuver in what is known as phase 0 or phase 1 of warfare. The United States military has attempted to divide the stages of warfare into 0 to 5, 5 being recovery, 0 being conflict. Well, the adversarial states know exactly when we would move to the stage of violence and purposefully stay in phase 0 and 1, but still can achieve results. This makes our response especially difficult. We wrestle with these legitimate, important questions of what constitutes armed conflict, but we may approach it in a foolish way. We invite lawyers to hold a seminar, and if you ask 10 lawyers their definition of armed conflict, you'll get 20 answers, and you'll get none of them who are willing to commit to a specific answer to apply in the future. Perhaps we should recognize that warfare today involves information operations, fake news, disinformation, the manipulation of social media, open source work, and much more. Maybe we have to confront adversarial states in these phases much better than we have in the past. I certainly don't mean do what they're doing, but it may involve elements of deterrence, which are both elements of defense and punishment. Defense, of course, being smart things, hardening your networks, making sure your cyber hygiene is correct, doing all you can to defend against intrusions. But elements of punishment can include very simple things, maybe just outing, exposing your attacker, pointing fingers at people on the payroll of states, exposing fake individuals, coming up with your counter-information, maybe even coming up with a counter-trolling operation. These operations don't necessarily violate international law. In fact, those don't. You can graduate your response, your levels of punishment. I know that the Department of Defense does not immediately advocate responses to cyber attack with cyber attack back, but instead always proposes a menu of options, of responses, of punishment to try to shape the environment back. Right now, we're really in an awkward situation, I would argue, where the adversaries have figured out cyberspace maybe better than we have. Right now, the adversaries are using cyberspace to control their population, steal industrial technology, implant weapons into our infrastructure, and are really getting away with quite a lot. We are a bit impotent and constipated in our response because it's such a complicated challenge involving little or no violence. Instead, we have to come up with ways to have this holistic reply.
Just one general question. Anybody can answer just one or two sentences. But as a journalist, are we slightly in danger of making fake news a whole big thing that it's not? Isn't it only a very transitional phenomenon? Because people are more and more aware of it. People perhaps weren't aware of it for 2 or 3 years, but people are now much more aware. I mean, I get lots of tweets saying, well, that's fake news, so I'm not trusting it. And people are now going and looking much more at the source of the information than they were 1 or 2 years ago, because there's so much. So aren't we making too much of a thing out of fake news? I don't know, just a quick reply on that before I continue our round table. What would you say? John? It seems to me people have evolved their attitude.
Just an observation that you've got to say that people using fake news have done pretty well. It's a very asymmetrical attack, very low cost, and potentially high impact. So I don't think the problem's going away.
In the microphone.
The problem is, I think we're doing it to ourselves. I think a lot of the fake news is not coming from other countries, although they're exploiting it, but we seem to do a pretty good job generating our own fake news and conspiracy theories indigenously. So the cure here is broader than just a question of geopolitics. It has to do with education and civic culture.
Effectivement, la réponse, c'est l'éducation, c'est l'esprit critique. C'est-à-dire, on ne pourra pas et il ne faudrait pas envisager un blocage a priori de l'information. Notre culture, alors si on prend la tradition française, c'est la liberté d'expression liée à une responsabilité dans la prise de parole. Vous êtes libre de vous exprimer, vous êtes responsable de ce que vous dites. Ce qui est certain, c'est qu'il faut d'abord miser, et de toute façon l'ensemble de la collectivité y gagnera, sur hausser le niveau de compétence, l'esprit critique et la capacité de dialogue. Mais l'automatisation du filtrage de contenu au nom d'une lutte contre l'information dite fausse est forcément pleine de dérives. Et donc misons sur l'intelligence, misons sur l'esprit critique, misons sur l'éducation. On y gagnera tous dans de nombreux autres domaines.
Bien. Okay, let's move on now to Marina Kalyorant. You're the chair of the Global Commission on the Stability of Cyberspace. So it's obviously very interesting to have your point of view. You're also a former Estonian ambassador and foreign minister and two-time national expert at the UN Group of Governmental Experts. Discussions on international norms and confidence-building measures in cyberspace, and now chair, as I said, of the GCSE. What do you think would be the challenges of getting to a binding agreement? You have experience of knowing how difficult it is to get countries to agree on things, and are states really hostile to this idea? And what do you think of the Microsoft initiative? All that in 4 minutes.
Thank you, Alex. To start with, I'd also like to say how honored and privileged I am to be on this panel with so distinguished co-panelists, and also I'm honored to bring some gender balance to this discussion. But now to your question. Well, when we talk about international security and the role of states, I see that states have understood that cybersecurity is part of international security. Cybersecurity is part of national security. We have some pretty good agreements. In the United Nations, we agreed already in 2013 that international law applies to cyber. We reconfirmed it in 2015. Yes, we could not reconfirm it in 2017, but it doesn't mean that that agreement is null and void. It exists. We have Budapest Convention on cyber crimes. We have good discussions and good results in confidence building, capacity building. So I would say that states have done a lot. But I agree that states are not as eager to agree on how further, especially when we talk about international law, as they should. What is the big question today? We might all do energy circles and repeat that international law applies to cyber. But the question is how? Lawyers are difficult animals. In Estonia, we also have a saying, if you have 2 lawyers, you have 3 opinions. But I would like to mention Tallinn Manual, 600 pages of international law written by 20 international law experts. They did not agree on everything, but they proposed how they see how international law applies to cyber. And now it's the role of governments to look into that. Because governments are the ones who adopt laws, who interpret laws, who apply laws. So I'm just addressing all the legal advisors sitting in the audience, from the ministries of Foreign Affairs, Defense, Prime Minister's, President's Office. Please take it very seriously. Look into what lawyers are proposing and start answering the question how international law applies to cyber. Now Microsoft. John and all Microsoft people, you know my position, but I repeat it briefly. I'd like to recognize Microsoft for what you're doing. There are not too many companies who are proposing norms, who are ready to accept criticism, but who are continuing. Because in the end, we have all the same aim, to have secure, safe, stable cyberspace. I don't think that states today are in the position of writing a new convention. I've been in the United Nations for more than 5 years. I've seen that. The ideological division is so deep that if we can't agree in real life what is aggression or what is terrorism, we will not be able to agree it in cyber. Writing a new convention, for me, it's a way of postponing doing what is important to do today. Look into what we have and start applying what we have. Do I exclude in the future any way of agreements or conventions? No, I'm not saying that. But today it's too early. Let's look into what we have, and if we find that something's missing, we can come back. And I'd like to recognize the work you've done, because your experts are looking into international law. You brought the example of international humanitarian law, and that is exactly what we need. So I'd like to call also other private sector industry representatives to follow the example of Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely, but if it's not working at the moment, what we have already, isn't it a valid initiative to look for some new process which could bring people together?
New process, if we want it to be global, we are not ready today for that. How are the agreements negotiated and drafted in the United Nations? You come together for about 20, 30 years, and then you're still with Article 1 definitions. We can start that process, but it will be waste of time. Instead of wasting time, we should look into what we have on the table today, and we have lots of materials. As I said, lawyers are producing their opinions. Now it's up to governments and legal advisors to look into that.
John, do you want to have a quick answer to that? Obviously, you know Marina's position. You've heard it before, but...
Well, no, actually, our positions, I actually think we learn from each other, and the dialogue has been very good. And I largely agree. We don't think the Digital Geneva Convention is going to happen anytime soon. It's a longer-term aspiration. And it is, in part, embracing the very good work that, for example, the commission that you're working on, as that'll be an important building block. Another example, the United States and China had a disagreement about, if you will, cyber intrusions to steal intellectual property. You know, it was a difficult discussion, but they made some progress. And collectively, we need to continue making progress where we can. And at the same time, I think it is important to embrace the international law that we have, but also challenge whether at times it's good enough.
Okay, did you want to say something? You were looking at me if you want to go on. Right, I'd like to finish our first round of questions with Florian Escudier. Vous êtes sous-directeur des affaires stratégiques et de la cybersécurité au ministère des Affaires étrangères ici en France. Ce qui serait intéressant, c'est que vous nous donnez votre vision de l'intérêt d'un accord ayant valeur de loi entre les États, dont on parle, quelque chose qui serait un peu à l'instar du International Atomic Energy, l'agence pour l'énergie atomique. Est-ce que c'est valable ou non? Quel est le point de vue de la France, en fait?
Merci beaucoup. Avant de répondre précisément à votre question, je voudrais, comme Marina Kellerland, dire que c'est pour nous d'abord une très bonne nouvelle que Microsoft prenne la parole sur cette question de la régulation internationale du cyberespace. Et j'espère que beaucoup d'autres acteurs non étatiques, que ce soit la société civile, les entreprises, participent à ce débat précisément au moment où les États, et ça a été rappelé, voient les limites de l'exercice, ce qui ne veut pas dire que cet exercice est terminé, mais il est important que d'autres acteurs viennent enrichir ce débat. C'est vrai que les entreprises, on les a souvent vues d'abord comme des victimes potentielles d'attaques cyber. Parfois, on les a vues aussi comme des complices involontaires. Je pense au cas où des infrastructures informatiques d'entreprise sont utilisées par des groupes d'attaquants pour attaquer d'autres cibles. Mais en fait, pas assez encore. On a vu les entreprises comme des acteurs de ce débat, et je crois qu'elles doivent l'être. Elles doivent être acteurs parce qu'elles ont une fonction essentielle, comme l'ensemble des participants du cyberespace, dans la résilience, et elles doivent se protéger comme nous tous, comme les États, comme les individus. Elles doivent aussi, elles ont un rôle majeur à jouer en termes de lutte contre la prolifération des armes cyber, enfin armes cyber entre guillemets. Elles ont un rôle aussi dans la lutte contre les vulnérabilités, et je pense, alors Microsoft c'est un très bon exemple, mais on a des entreprises systémiques qui sont des piliers du cyberespace et qui produisent les produits, les softwares, etc., qui sont utilisés évidemment par les utilisateurs, mais aussi par les attaquants qui utilisent et qui exploitent les vulnérabilités. Et donc il est essentiel que les acteurs qui produisent ces moyens produisent aussi les moyens de les maintenir en état de fonctionnement sur le long terme. Donc ça, c'est des sujets sur lesquels vraiment on attend beaucoup des entreprises. De même, il y a un sujet qu'on avait beaucoup discuté aux Nations Unies, c'est ce qu'on appelle le hackback, c'est-à-dire, pour faire simple, le mercenariat et la possibilité pour des acteurs privés de conduire des attaques de représailles dans le cyberespace. Nous souhaitons que les entreprises se joignent aux États pour dire que ce type de comportement n'est pas tolérable parce qu'il est profondément déstabilisateur. Alors tous ces sujets que je viens d'évoquer, ils font partie de propositions que la France va porter au G20, et j'espère bien que précisément au G20, où il y a une tradition de coopération entre les acteurs étatiques et les acteurs privés, nous puissions continuer ce débat. Alors maintenant, sur la proposition de Microsoft elle-même, et notamment les deux aspects que vous avez évoqués, qui étaient dans la présentation de John Frank, sur le caractère légalement contraignant d'une part, et la question de l'attribution avec l'exemple de l'AIEA. Je crois qu'évidemment, à ce stade, on réagit du côté du Quai d'Orsay des autorités françaises avec intérêt, mais aussi des interrogations, notamment sur ces deux points. Sur l'aspect accord légalement, juridiquement contraignant, comme Madame Kellerland, je pense qu'il est beaucoup trop tôt pour envisager qu'on puisse aller vers un outil qui soit un minimum universel, et sans universalité, le caractère légalement ou juridiquement contraignant perdrait, je crois, beaucoup de son intérêt. Sur la question de l'attribution, alors là, je vais peut-être en parler une minute de plus parce que c'est un sujet vraiment sensible et important. Sans remonter à l'assassinat de François Ferdinand, on sait qu'attribuer une attaque, c'est toujours un acte politiquement extrêmement important et qui entraîne et qui justifie des actes, y compris de recours à la force, sur la base de cette attribution. Je pense à l'Irak en 2003, je pense à ce qui se passe avec les armes chimiques en Syrie. Et donc, on ne peut pas considérer l'attribution comme un pur processus technique qui pourrait être confié à des experts, fussent-ils neutres et politiquement indépendants. C'est certes un processus qui se base sur une analyse technique, mais aussi sur une analyse de renseignement, sur des comparaisons entre des attaques qui ont pu se passer dans le passé, mais aussi sur l'intégration de cette analyse dans ce qu'on comprend de la posture de défense et de cyberdéfense d'un attaquant potentiel. Et donc, in fine, c'est très politique. C'est très politique aussi parce que, et je l'ai dit, on va prendre des décisions sur la base de cette attribution. On va éventuellement mener une contre-attaque ou prendre des contre-mesures et donc s'engager dans une forme d'escalade qui ne peut être, à mon avis, maîtrisée que si elle émane des États. Et donc c'est très important que ce processus soit un processus conduit, assumé, légitimé par les États.
Merci beaucoup. As you see, we're getting some tweets through. You're tweeting some quotations from what you've been saying so far. And here's Aster's comment on it, hack back. John, Frank, perhaps it'd be interesting just after this first round if you tell us how you intend to go forward. We're talking about civil groups and so forth. What's the involvement of governments? What is the process that you're going to put in place to take this thing forward?
Well, I think we're engaging a group of international law experts, and in fact, in I think 2 or 3 weeks, we've got a lengthy seminar planned with them to kind of go through several scenarios and actually take the cases that I've talked about today and try to determine how international law applies and what gaps can be. So we're trying to contribute doing the intellectual foundation work. We're also discussing these issues with industry about what can industry agree to, and we all have different businesses, so different points, but we are expanding the circles of those conversations, and other people have started them on their own, and I think that's terrific. So we're going to be continuing to engage on that. I think the attribution point, we share the sense that we realize we're stepping into a space that is sensitive, and so we're trying to understand how can we contribute scientific knowledge in a way that is not political to provide more accountability. We do want nation states to know that when they attack, if they have attacks that affect civilians, we're not trying to interfere on state actions, whether in peace or war. It's when actions come against civilians, private companies, that's where we're really trying to focus on. And so we'll be having more conversations about how we think about it and learning from governments, because we've been cautioned that it is a political act of attribution, and so at times we call it accountability. But so we'll be continuing the discussions with a number of groups about the different ways forward while being engaged and encouraging and supporting the actions to find specific norms where we can.
It seems to me, I've been hosting these things now, obviously something that interests us all, that maybe we don't make enough difference between the kind of murky world that you were talking about and nation-state attacks. It's two totally different things, isn't it? And I mean, human lives are at risk with the nation-state attacks. Should we be really discussing these things in the same breath, practically, as if they were all kind of a degree of scale? Isn't it two totally different things? Kind of the murky world of criminal gangs who can steal stuff off my PayPal account, as has happened to me, or nation-state attacks, which is actually, as you said, with the NHS, people not getting their operations, so maybe dying. It's two totally different things, isn't it? And don't we confuse them, or is it a level of scale? Anybody argue with each other?
I would actually say that if we make a mistake, we treat them as too distinct sometimes. I mean, I think what we've observed, and you see it in a recent indictment of a couple of FSB officials in connection with a hack into the Yahoo accounts, often nation states will use criminal groups as surrogates. And what they may say is, you can go on and commit crimes, don't do it here, and we saw the map John Frank put up about the botnets, but the condition of our leaving you alone is when we need you to help us so we can come in kind of through your by tailgating you, or actually carrying out an operation, you'll do it. The tools wind up being the same. As I think you saw with WannaCry and NotPetya, you can easily get into things that are destructive. We haven't seen anything at the scale of a true full-on military attack, but candidly, I think that's a matter of time rather than something you can count on.
La question de la proportionnalité va être aussi importante, c'est-à-dire que lorsque l'on va concevoir la logique de la riposte, faire en sorte que, est-ce que j'ai bien une mesure la plus précise possible de l'attaque dont j'ai fait l'objet, de manière à ce que je vais susciter comme riposte en assumant éventuellement la désignation d'un auteur. Est-ce que cette proportionnalité va être possible? Est-ce qu'elle va être respectée? Et ça va être aussi une remise en cause des règles entre quelle peut être la réaction légitime, qui serait l'équivalent de la légitime défense. J'ai fait l'objet d'une attaque, je peux répondre, avec les problématiques de simultanéité. Je dois répondre dans des délais pas trop longs et faire en sorte que ma riposte, en quelque sorte, soit proportionnée. Et c'est là où ça suppose de mener des investigations qui permettent de cerner l'ampleur éventuellement du dégât subi et qu'on puisse ne pas contester le fait de la proportionnalité. Et la deuxième chose, on évoquait le cas des entreprises, des États. On peut envisager le scénario d'un État en manque de liquidité financière liée à l'application d'embargos internationaux et qui va utiliser l'arme du rançongiciel à des fins de collecte, c'est-à-dire un mode opératoire très criminel, qui est crapuleux, mais qui lui sert à financer une activité étatique, puisqu'il a des contraintes sur les marchés internationaux. Et donc c'est vrai que c'est important de reconsidérer cette notion justement d'entité de nature juridique. On est dans l'asymétrie la plus aboutie, et elle va certainement aller en s'intensifiant.
James, you wish to add something to that?
I agree and want to even expand the problem. There's a category of criminality that exists in some of the malicious cyberstates. By the way, I won't name the malicious cyberstates, but their initials are Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. There is a category of individuals that don't exist in France or the United States. These are, as the Secretary mentioned, people who commit their crimes with the countenance, the understanding of the state. This makes our legalistic response doubly complicated. I will note very quickly, there's a crude analogy where Al-Qaeda, of course, attacked the United States, a group inside the state of Afghanistan. We used a legalistic tool to attack the government of Afghanistan because it refused to turn over the group that existed inside the state for its responsibility for the attack.
Right, I'd like to talk now about non-proliferation, as in all arms control discussions. What do you think about what should governments hoard knowledge about software vulnerabilities, or should they be sharing them? Because it's obviously a big debate. What do you think is the moral responsibility of governments when you know that what can happen if they do or if they don't share these things? Where should governments stand on the non-proliferation issue? Nicolas.
La difficulté avec les failles informatiques, c'est qu'effectivement, elles sont quelquefois, j'allais dire, natives, puisqu'elles n'ont pas été forcément des aménagements permettant l'accès à son producteur, à l'éditeur ou éventuellement à un État, mais c'est une défaillance. Et c'est vrai que la question est toujours celle de l'arbitrage entre quand est-ce que je communique sur une faille, de manière à ce que les détenteurs des équipements subissant cette faille puissent y remédier, faire des pansements, et le fait que tout le monde ne le fera pas, et qu'en désignant la faille, vous renseignez des pirates, d'ailleurs pas forcément de première catégorie, mais plutôt de deuxième, qui vont, en fait, dès lors que vous leur désignez le modus operandi, vont l'exploiter, partant de l'idée, rappelons-le, que tout le monde n'applique pas des politiques de sécurité veillant à tirer les enseignements des annonces qui sont faites désignant telle ou telle faille et les processus de correction qui sont procédés. La seule chose, c'est qu'effectivement, il faut intensifier et là je reviens sur la problématique de l'éducation, c'est-à-dire que intensifier la responsabilité des acteurs économiques, administratifs, militaires, dans la préservation de leurs actifs numériques. Ça, c'est très important. Et la deuxième, d'une relation de confiance, et on parle de sécurité, mais il y a aussi la notion de confiance entre un État et son écosystème. Dans un partage d'informations, je peux faire une analogie triviale, et je m'en excuse, mais pour éclairer le propos. C'est la maladie vénérienne. Les circonstances morales dans lesquelles vous avez eu cette maladie vénérienne, l'État n'est pas intéressé à la connaître. Il n'est pas là pour vous juger. Par contre, il est là pour connaître les caractéristiques de cette infection, parce qu'il va pouvoir informer les entités, les acteurs, les intervenants qui ont des pratiques ou un environnement comparable et qui donc pourraient être soumis à cette attaque-là. Parce que souvent, le pirate est un opportuniste. C'est quelqu'un, lorsqu'il a identifié un mode opératoire qui marche, il va essayer de le déployer de manière à soit gagner plus d'argent s'il est dans une démarche crapuleuse, soit au contraire, donner plus d'ampleur à la réussite de son attaque. Lorsqu'il y a cette relation de confiance, où vous pouvez échanger des informations sur votre état de salubrité ou d'insécurité, sans risque d'être stigmatisé, jugé, parce que vous êtes dans un univers où justement nous avons tous intérêt à être dans une chaîne qui est interconnectée et donc qu'elle soit le plus sécurisée possible, les partenaires, les entreprises, les administrations sont plus à l'aise pour communiquer sur leurs défaillances. Et donc à ce moment-là, on peut se renseigner de manière commune. Et donc, on ne vous juge pas moralement sur votre exposition au risque, mais on fait en sorte que si vous documentez cette faiblesse qui vous caractérise, vous renseignez les partenaires de confiance, et il faut établir cette confiance, éprouver cette confiance, et faire en sorte justement qu'elle soit une relation bien spécifique entre un décideur public et tout un écosystème. Et ça, ça pourra s'étendre à l'échelle internationale, dans le cadre de cercles de confiance. Ça existe avec les CERT, les Computer Emergency Response Team, qui existent, partagent, d'ailleurs avec des entreprises qui peuvent être concurrentes entre elles, des informations au nom de ce qui a été désigné un intérêt supérieur de la sécurité collective, partant de l'idée que le maillon le plus chaîne du dispositif risque de fragiliser l'ensemble de l'organisation.
Marina, I saw you nodding during that. You concur?
Yes, thank you. I very much agree with what Nicola said about trust. It's very much the question of trust. And again, I come from the country which fell under the first cyber attack against sovereign states in 2007. And the lesson we learned from there was that if you want to be efficient as a state, as a government, efficient in providing cybersecurity, you have to have all-nation approach. All-nation approach, cooperation with private sector, so that PPP is not only a slogan on a strategy document, but is a real plan and really working in real life. And you should have the same cooperation with academia, IT sector, civil society. Only then you can be successful in providing cybersecurity.
How do you get that, though? How do you get that? How do you establish that? There's so many different partners who don't want to give up their own little domains.
I think that private sector and industry will learn. The attacks 2007 were against our banks. Instead of hiding the first attack, the first bank approached the second one. Second bank approached the third one. So they started cooperating immediately. And they started cooperating with government. So we learned our lesson from there. Other states, other companies have to find their ways. I'm not preaching that our way is the best, but if you want to be efficient, then multi-stakeholder approach and cooperation with industry is crucial.
Michael, would you like to add something to that?
No, I think this is clearly an all-of-society issue, and I think I'd make a couple of points. One is, I tend to use the analogy of the human body and its defenses against infection and viruses as an analogy. We don't expect the body to keep everything out. We have systems in our body that detect and characterize malicious bacteria or viruses and then kill it if your body is working properly. And we inoculate people or vaccine them as a form of information sharing to give your white blood cells the code they need to detect something early. And so I think much the same analogy works with society. I mean, the ability to build that trust, to share that information, to develop a kind of a herd immunity, it's not going to result in no one getting hacked, but what it will do is it'll reduce the level and it'll force the attackers to use at least their more sophisticated tools and burn them at an earlier stage, as opposed to letting them get away with using the same old stuff over and over again because we don't share information or cooperate.
Okay, I'd like to move us on now. I said we were going to be talking about deterrence, as this is a general warfare discussion. What kind of deterrence do you think is realistic? What kind of deterrence do you think is possible? Are we talking about a kind of hackback situation or cyber attacks? Is this realistic? Or is there some other kind of deterrence which is going to stop the murky world or the nation states? I'd like to hear your views on that because I think it's relevant. Perhaps, James, you could give us your thoughts.
There are two elements to strong deterrence: defense and punishment. Right now, what's lacking are elements of punishment. To crudely come up with an analogy, the attitudes of Western states, very idealistic, very understanding, are faced with the dilemma of what to do when malicious state or semi-state actions occur. And right now, say your daughter is kidnapped by East European criminals and held hostage. At the moment, the Western states will say, please don't do anything in response, and oh, by the way, we're not likely to take any response ourselves. And worse, if you were to do something yourself, we'll probably punish you. In fact, we have to give back your daughter back to these criminals if you actually act in reply. There's no element of fear, punishment, that these states now suffer. Punishment doesn't have to include attacks in kind. They don't have to be out of proportion. They can begin with simple exposing of such activity, economic sanctions, kicking out financial institutions, or there are certain state cyber actions which are defensive, disrupting networks, muting networks, shifting networks, all the way to more strategic attack if necessary. What's lacking is elements of punishment.
Anybody else on this particular, Nicolas?
Merci. Oui, donc je crois que pour le public français ou francophone, il est nécessaire, quand on aborde ce sujet, de purger un sujet lexical, qui est l'emploi précisément du mot deterrence, dissuasion en français. En français, la dissuasion, c'est la dissuasion nucléaire, et toute analogie entre ce qu'on entend par dissuasion nucléaire et ce qu'on entend ici dans ce contexte cyber doit être bannie. La dissuasion nucléaire, ça fait référence à une doctrine qui fait référence à une arme qui produit des effets tels et des dommages tellement inacceptables pour celui qui en est la cible que l'impact stratégique est qu'il sera conduit à ne rien entreprendre du tout. Évidemment, rien de tel n'est envisageable dans le domaine cyber puisque des attaques ont lieu et que la question sera certes de les dissuader, mais aussi de continuer à vivre une fois qu'elles auront eu lieu et d'éviter qu'elles se reproduisent. Et c'est là que la notion de punition continue à avoir toute sa signification dans le cas des attaques cyber. D'ailleurs, une réponse à une attaque cyber n'est pas forcément une réponse cyber, et c'est tout à fait juste de dire que on peut mobiliser des outils diplomatiques, économiques, militaires effectivement, et qui peuvent être conventionnels aussi bien que cyber, enfin si on exclut le cyber du conventionnel. Et donc voilà, et donc ce qu'il faut construire, c'est davantage une politique de découragement des attaques que de dissuasion, en tout cas dans la langue de Molière. Merci.
Sachant que aussi une des options, c'est de réduire l'exposition au risque numérique, c'est-à-dire pas de la dissuasion. La dissuasion, c'est je dois vous empêcher de concevoir l'utilisation, l'exploitation de l'arme que vous détenez. Dans le domaine du cyber, le numérique permet de concevoir le fait de disposer de politiques de recouvrement en disant cette attaque, c'est pas le côté même pas mal, mais je peux me rebâtir, je peux reconstituer une activité dans des délais raisonnables et donc je réduis mon exposition au risque numérique. C'est là aussi le changement de posture, c'est que je ne risque pas votre destruction, je me suis organisé pour en tout cas minimiser l'impact d'une attaque et me mettre en position de résilience, de revenir à une situation normale. Et c'est là où on voit effectivement que la notion d'entraînement, d'identification des actifs, la capacité de restauration vont faire partie des stratégies pour amoindrir les effets de l'attaque, faute d'avoir pu l'empêcher.
John, you wish to add something to that?
I'd like to just reemphasize that economic punishment is important. You know, it may not work all the time. You know, economic sanctions aren't working to get Russia to leave Crimea. There's lots of things, it's imperfect, but in our international world, that is the best we have. And we do look for success sometimes. You embrace it. I do think the U.S.-China discussions, they were difficult in part because they were made public. And eventually, leaders and countries don't want to be shamed. And so we can have a range of motivations for countries to move to a better norm. And so I think it's, even though sanctions and economic punishments may not be perfect, it's important to recognize that they're the best tools we have.
Okay, yes.
Just very briefly on offensive measures. From the government's and states' point of view, I think some 5-6 years ago, nobody was admitting that they have any offensive capabilities. Everybody had defensive capabilities. I think the fact that we are now talking, and there are about 30 countries who have admitted that they are also improving their offensive capabilities, I think it's right. I think it's a way of deterrence. It's fair, it's open. What's the basic line? The basic line is to be within international law. In the end of the day, I'll refer to Article 51 of the UN Charter, inherent right of states for self-defense. We have it there. States have the right to choose the countermeasures, to choose how to punish or how to react, but it has to stay within international law. And now again the question, how? And here we have to discuss, and there are many open questions where we do not have answers yet.
Right, I'm going to be terrible because there's only 6 minutes left, and I've rarely had such an interesting panel. I'm confused, though. I don't know whether I should be optimistic or pessimistic about 5 or 10 years to come, so I'm going to give you all a minute to persuade me whether you think the future is bright or you think the future is murky, because I'm not sure, after having hosted 2 days here, if in 5 or 10 years' time, the FEAC is going to be absolutely enormous because there's so many threats to us through cyber security and insecurity. So tell me what I should be in 5-10 years and what the FEAC is going to be able to do about that. And do it in a minute if you can, because it's just ridiculous. Well, we've only got 5 minutes left.
The good news is we're dealing with the issues. The bad news is that the surface area for attacks are increasing, and 2 developments to watch. The Internet of Things dramatically increases the surface area for attacks. And right now, the standards for what you have to do, for example, to require people to allow patching capability or updating, are not there. And so we're creating weaknesses in the interest of kind of satisfying consumer demand. The second thing is I think we're going to hit technological revolutions in 2 ways that it's too early to predict what the result will be. One is the increasing use of artificial intelligence, which can be both a defensive capability, but it can also, if not properly controlled, really spin out of control. And then I think quantum computing, particularly as it relates to issues like encryption. So I'm going to quote, paraphrase what Zhou Enlai apparently is reputed to have said to Henry Kissinger when Kissinger asked him how he felt about the French Revolution. And Zhou Enlai said, too soon to tell.
There are new challenges. There are emerging threats. They're becoming more and more sophisticated, more and more complex. We can face them, and we can be optimistic if states who have the central role in cybersecurity as in security will finally start cooperating among themselves internationally. And second, if states are smart enough to listen to other non-state actors, cooperate with industry, with civil society, international platforms, organizations, IT folks. If they do these 2 small things, we'll be good.
The very tool, the internet, invented by the West, which we had hoped would serve as a wedge to open authoritarian and totalitarian states, has instead served their state purposes, maybe better than ours. The internet serves us very well. It serves their states very well as well. Our challenge is to recognize how things have not emerged as well as we had hoped, and to adjust and make these changes necessary to rebalance and correct what is emerging.
Je crois que dans 10 ans, le monde ne sera pas moins dangereux et la menace cyber ne sera pas moins haute, elle sera sans doute plus élevée. En revanche, ce qui aura changé dans 10 ans, c'est que nous serons ô combien mieux préparés, nos sociétés seront plus résilientes, nos procédures et nos doctrines seront mieux assises, notre capacité à coopérer entre États soucieux de ne pas se laisser impressionner par ces menaces, y compris lorsqu'elles sont agitées par des États, et ben, ces États seront capables d'agir ensemble et de faire respecter la conception du droit international qui prévaut selon eux. Peut-être que je suis optimiste.
Vous savez, c'est un optimiste qui a inventé l'avion et c'est un pessimiste qui a inventé le parachute. Eh ben, je pense que les crises, les chances qu'on peut avoir, elles naîtront justement de cette créativité. On parle de technologie, mais qui sera aussi très humaine. Donc il faut le voir avec un optimisme conscient, c'est-à-dire se dire que c'est créateur de valeur. Simplement, il y a de l'humain derrière, donc il faut être conscient et vigilant. Mais après tout, soyons résolument optimistes, ça en vaut la peine.
John, the final word is up to you if you can resume the round table.
I think the future is very much made by people living today and people in this room. And it is our future, and it is up to us to engage on these points. And I know the industry, we're busy with lots of things. We have our customers, we have our, lots of technology research and to do, but we need to engage as an industry to try to change the paradigm here to get a better outcome than we would otherwise get 10 years from now. And so the people in this room will shape whether we're be optimistic or whether we're going to continue to have these problems that will continue to grow.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for Microsoft for your help in this, and also thank you to Donald, who did a lot to organize this round table and get you all together. What a fascinating discussion. We could have gone on for another hour, but people have trains, planes, and so forth to catch, so we finished on time. But wow, we could have continued the discussion. Thank you very much for having given us an insight into some of the basic problems. Please, big round of applause, si on peut les applaudir. Merci beaucoup. On aurait pu continuer pendant des heures, mais voilà, merci de votre présence. Et donc, Aster fini, on l'a retiré. J'allais donc commenter son dernier dessin. En tout cas, merci. Et merci à l'équipe. There we are. About punishment, if you want, I can give you some ideas. There we are. Perfect. Thank you very much. Et vous avez reconnu, effectivement. Merci beaucoup de votre présence. Et puis, bon FIC. Et puis, on se revoit l'année prochaine. Et vous allez conclure, donc, tous les deux.
Eh bien, merci Alex Taylor pour votre animation. Merci à nos intervenants qui ont eu finalement le dernier mot du FIC. Nous allons simplement dire quelques mots pour vous dire merci pour votre présence. Merci d'être venu si loin. 8600 participants au FIC 2018. C'est 20% de plus que l'an dernier. C'est une progression constante. Et je crois que c'est une progression constante en quantité et en qualité. Voilà, en tout cas, merci vraiment. Et je passe la parole à Guillaume. Et en même temps, je profite pour remercier toute l'équipe FIC avec Guillaume.
Merci beaucoup. Non, je voulais simplement vous donner les dates du prochain FIC. À Lille, toujours. Donc ce sera les mardis 22 et mercredi 23 janvier 2019. Merci à tous.